somewhere in the number of self-criticisms of the group, uh, both, kind of referred back to oneself as an individual, but also referred to the group about like, that we had not yet done enough in relationship to what's happening in Palestine. And while I do agree with the spirit of that critique, and I think as individuals, I mean, we all have our own assessments. I certainly feel like I need to be doing more. I kind of think looking back on the last couple of weeks in the organization, I'm not really convinced that we can hold the same critique for the organization, because in a sense, I feel like this is the first time we've stumbled on something as an organization that's put our own consistency into question. And I think part of being experimental as an organization and not simply promulgating an experimentalist ideology is to have to be open to not knowing exactly what it is. So, I've been playing a lot with synthesizers recently, and there's this thing called timbre in a sound that's like, it's what gives it its like particular aesthetic quality. It's like what makes a sound that sound. And you can take any sound and you can break it up into like sine waves, frequencies, amplitudes. It can be very analytically broken down to very simple parts and pieces, and then reassembled perfectly if you have enough, like a big enough computer, essentially. But when you're actually like trying to find sounds, and especially when you're trying to find a sound that like you feel is like, yeah, that's like what I want, you're not trying systematic combinations of like waves and saying, oh, I'm going to add like 0.3 more here and 0.4 more there. You're like experimenting, just moving dials, trying different kinds of things, and then you stumble on a sound and you realize like not only could you never have found it by some like scientific procedure, but you didn't even know what you were looking for until you found it. Right? There's a level of ignorance, not at a first order of kind of like the specifics of how to do this or how to do that or how to explain this in the theory or that, but like, and I think we dealt with this earlier on in a more theoretical context. We didn't even really know what we were looking for until things really started to click around the modes and the logics, and something started to hit. And then we started to recognize it more and more. We also began to have a standard by which to hold each other to like more or less coherency. Like, this is this fitting into our theory? Is it not? And so, to play with this idea, I'd say I don't think we've really known the timbre of our political seriousness up until now. I think we've stumbled on it. We know what it's like. We now have had the formal procedure of having to test out what consistency in our organization looks like. And we're currently evaluating that through the process of documents and kind of like responses to a proposal, all of which are very kind of classic political organization things we're doing all of a sudden in relationship precisely to this political inconsistency that had to be addressed. So this isn't like to make any excuses or be like, oh, see, we couldn't have done anything. I just think in a sense, we're just now really starting to have a sense of what it is we could even be doing. So in that spirit, I'm just going to put forward some ideas and stuff, as much to just get the conversation rolling. Some of them are things I'm going to be doing regardless. Some of them are things I think the group could or could not be doing. Yeah, so I'll go into those. I'll just point out one thing, I guess, before going to the specifics, which is the question of like how much we do or don't change what we've been doing. I think there's like some of the things pretty much everything I'm going to lay out, I think has basis in what we've done. Some of them are new in the sense that we'd be kind of like changing how we prioritize things. And some of them are new in the sense of how we're applying kind of more methodologically, like how we're actually like doing our kind of theoretical work. But I think there's a basis for pretty much everything I'm about to bring up. The only thing I would say that we're unused to is the actual problem of urgency, a temporal urgency. And just to lay the groundwork or the moment, during the Super Bowl yesterday, Israeli occupation forces launched their attack on Rafah. United States finally put up something like a bit of pressure in terms of saying they want to see a plan before the occupation forces attack. Ben-Gvir, the national security guy, responded that the plan would be that the IOF would be authorized and encouraged to shoot women and children, which they haven't explicitly said up until now. So whatever it is we do, I guess that's the kind of horizon of urgency. And I don't think we know what that looks like for us. So that would be the kind of material constraint on our experimentality going forward on what it means to do Palestine work. We can't force anything despite the horror of what's happening. But I do think, and this has come up, I think, in some of the discussions around like criticism and like reflections and some of the things that came up with some of John Bova's questions, for example, is that we're in a kind of temporality of urgency that is imminent to politics in a way it's not imminent to science or philosophy. And I think we've been able to do a lot of work in a certain kind of space. We've been able to do a lot of work in a certain kind of space of scientific and philosophical temporality and thinking. And for the first time, we're really confronted with political temporality. And frankly, in a pace that none of us individually in our other political work have ever experienced. So that's to simultaneously frame the reality of the challenge we're facing, but also remind ourselves we can't snap our fingers and make ourselves into something we're not, do things we're not, or force time in a way we would otherwise maybe want to. So yeah, with all that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and just quickly go through a number of proposals. I don't have anything written, so I will, I guess take notes if you need things down. I can also copy and paste afterwards my outline into the chat, but I'm just going to go ahead and go for now. So there's going to be 4 general headings. First are arguments that I think, or proposals I think we should take up like as a collective, all hands on deck style. 2 are things that I think at least I'm going to be working on, and maybe others as well, that we can connect to, but I don't think necessarily politically makes sense to like center as a collective. 3 is a certain kind of philosophical challenge I just want to bring up. And then 4 is I'll wrap on the Mode B stuff, since that's come up as a conversation and that seems to resonate deeply with this. 3 kind of, I would say, organizational proposals. The first one is, as obvious as this seems, to think about Palestine. And when I say that, I mean it in the way that for the last couple of years, we've thought about Brazil. Brazil has been the place of a certain kind of paradigmatic, exemplary, and I don't know what you want to call it, overdetermined kind of space where we've been able to explore a lot of our hypotheses, not because they wouldn't be true elsewhere, but for a variety of reasons in this weird dialectical way. There's something about the Brazilian experience that enables us to see things. I want to argue that we take that up in terms of Palestine when we're thinking about issues, when we're talking in presentations about issues, and when we're writing in our texts about issues, that we start to bring that kind of like subject matter at the level of thought and presentation up. I think that this is one of those things we've done before, but is different because, for the obvious fact that like none of us are Palestinian. Some of us are very close to the resistance. Most of us are by no means close to that. So there's not nearly the same kind of embeddedness in. So I think the challenge of what it means to think and speak about Palestine and solidarity without necessarily having that same interiority is going to be a point. Second, and I've brought this up and I've shared the PDF in the repo, 100 Years War on Palestine by Rashid Khalidi, Palestinian grandson or great-grandson of essentially the founder of the anti-Zionist Palestinian, or at least one of the lines of that resistance. And it covers from 1917 to 2017 and a number of assaults, basically, which I think actually lends itself to our case studies approach. So what I would propose is that we read this book as a collective, just as we've done with other texts. And kind of as Dennis brought up, that he said, he kind of missed that we hadn't really started to use the language or diagrams of our theory. I would just propose here that we read this book collectively and then essentially attempt to talk about it in our own terms. Whatever comes of that will come of that. But I think like if we commit to that collectively and if we just start thinking through how to explain and understand what's happening in this book from the basis of what we already have available to us, I think we'll very quickly start to get a sense of what we can do with that. But I think just setting like some meeting times and setting like some goals as far as how far to get and blah, blah, blah would just be a good way. And I think the meetings themselves could be very open-ended. They could just be, more book discussion groups. In fact, I was thinking it might be a good time to experiment with the facilitation, because it'd be good to be able to also bring other people in potentially into these meetings to talk about it. And if we had some like time constraints and stack, it would help to, do all the things of letting new folks easier into the conversations. I think especially right now, so that we could be sensitive to both anyone that may come from the region that Fatima is connecting to, as well as any Brazilian comrades that might want to be available, that we'd be aware of the language gaps for meetings. And then if we have structure with facilitation, it actually can help to create space for people who otherwise might not feel comfortable to speak because they have like a fixed set of time and whatnot. So we can kind of hone in the discussion on this, but yeah, the gist of the proposal would be to read the book collectively, have meetings about it, and just do the work of thinking it collectively as STP. And then the last, God damn it, my password screen locked, of course. And then the last proposal is so we've already talked about having like kind of the next big priority in-person meeting would be in the United States. I'll go into it a bit more in a second, but I did finally get in touch with Students for Justice in Palestine group here, and they're launching BDS work on the University of Oregon campus. They're really interested in interfacing both to like tell their story and to hear about what's happening over there from on the ground perspectives. And I think we as STP could potentially kind of facilitate and co-host an event to bring people. SJP, I mean, it's a national group, national campaign. I think we could potentially do something that allows us to frame the conversation in terms that would be like native to what we're doing. Like already the idea of like ecosystems of resistance or ecologies of resistance, which someone who's studying the the resistance groups in the region, they coined that term as a way to come to terms with what they're studying. So it's not even like we're trying to impose a terminology. It's more of a common ground that a lot of people are resonating with to understand these problems. But I would just, I guess the third proposal for the group would be to think how we can use the US meetup as something that may be larger and more specific to the moment around Palestinian solidarity than STP. The potentially most controversial thing about that would be, I would argue that if we could do it sooner and make it larger, but have it online, we should prioritize that. Obviously, we've been wanting to meet in person. I think that should still be a goal. And actually, if we organize around this stuff, it could very well lead to something more in person. But I do think for the urgency of the situation, I think we could be involved in helping build some nationwide solidarity. In fact, at the event, the speaker framed their work in BDS in terms of, we're going to build up support around the campus. Once we do that, we're going to push up pressure at the Oregon level. And once we do that, we're going to push it up at the national level. They're articulating their problems or their politics in terms of a very like concrete scaling strategy. And so these are places that I think we actually have a lot to say on the matter. So, and I think there's also potentials to interface this with other struggles that are happening, especially around both indigenous and the border right now, all of which resonate profoundly with the settler colonial shit. All right. I know I'm going fast, but I'm trying to make time for conversation. And also, I don't think there's that much to be said for any one of these things that can't be addressed in conversation. But those would be the three I'm proposing for like the org. Two things I would make a case for participating in if you're interested. And if we want to get a full-on kind of like channel and subset going within the group, I would be ecstatic, but also we may just, I may just talk about it in a presentation if that's kind of where it is. But it would have really helped, and I'm sorry for my like manic ranting in general about some of this stuff, but it would have helped if I had explicitly said that what I was attempting to do was to extend the extant strategy of the boycott, divest, and sanctions movement that's been called by Palestinians as like a way of doing boycott or as international solidarity. But the gist of my argument there is I think that our theory can be used as a way to do research on places that are more or less effective to do boycotts, divestments, and sanctions. I think we've done the kind of work that, we quote, study our opponent's systems, but we've done it like macro levels. We're describing capitalist worlds, state worlds, and whatnot. We've studied workplaces and whatnot, but most of our like hands-on case studies have been much more around, our side and movements and stuff, which I think by and large it should be. But I think this would require the kind of hands-on research that I think was most exemplified in Victor's presentation on the kind of organizational ecology of the right-wing skepticism movement in Brazil. So this would be kind of hands-on research using the kind of approaches we do to understand where there are more or less weak points, strong points, what would be worthwhile putting energy into. There's some things that I would love to discuss in another context a little bit more, like in the particulars. But I think that there are some like vulnerabilities right now that could be leveraged, but they require organizing. So this would be essentially like, how can the STP contribute to the BDS movement? I don't think it's by like organizing campaigns, to be clear. I don't think it's by like doing lots of propaganda. But I do think that we've already got interfaces with the movement at several points, and there are various ways to get involved in the conversation at national level. And if we did have useful hands-on research to provide, I think it could make differences in certain points. The other thing is just kind of, as we study this, there may be questions of like good old-fashioned, arguments in the movements from like a political perspective. One of the main ones I'm taking on, which I think I ranted about as well, is like the need to challenge the idea that Zionism controls America, and not that like Zionism is one particularly dear and beloved investment of America. But without going down that rabbit hole, like we've given Israel something like 150, couple $100 billion over the course of our time with Israel. And I've seen a lot of people say like, oh, this is why you don't have healthcare. We spent $500 billion on the military just last year. That's not why we don't have healthcare in the United States. We never needed Zionists to steal land from the indigenous or mass slavery. But it does, I think, obscure the actual relations of power. I think it can kind of cover over strategic possibilities that are there, and so on. So I think that there are questions of like, do we want to get involved in publishing things or writing accounts or something like that? But I think these can be honed in. So yeah, so essentially, as far as things that I'm personally involved in, there may be others involved in as well, that I think we could easily extend would be one, using our way we see things to do research for BDS, and two, to think through political arguments in the movement. Three, this would be, I guess you could say, the philosophical point, and the Baduvian point of fidelity to the moment of the event, fidelity to the event of what's happening right now. What we're seeing, both within the Palestinian resistance and then Lebanon and Yemen, there are announcements about soldiers potentially from Afghanistan. What we're seeing a resistance that it's articulated in terms of Islamic resistance. without taking a side or a position or whatnot, I think we have to let ourselves as a collective, both politically and theoretically, be like disturbed and dissettled by the fact that I don't think this fits easily into our theory up until now. I don't think we have like a nice, neat place for religion. I don't think we can just put it all in mode D and let Karatani do the work. Like, I think our theory doesn't really have a place for exactly what's happening now. I think looking at Badiou himself, when he reads, for example, his work on St. Paul, despite being an atheist, I would say that that's a text of utmost comradely generosity and respect. And I would approach, this question the same now. I think, whatever we are going into it. But I think an attitude of kind of what is it about this religion and culture, because Islamic culture is much more than just the Muslim people living within it. It's kind of the culture of the region, right? Like, what has contributed to the resistance of the moment? How is it that it's informing not just the resistance in the organized military sense like Hamas, but also the resilience and kind of maintenance of human dignity that we're seeing amongst Palestinian refugees and survivors at the moment right now. There's no particular proposal around that. I know I'm reading with a friend, Shariardi, and I found out that Fatima is reading Shariardi. So he's a Iranian Shia revolutionary thinker. But there's a lot of ways to go there. I would just advise comrades to let themselves be like eventually disturbed by what's going on in that sense, beyond just the utter the genocidal side of the disturbed. So that's vague, but I have only vague thoughts about that. So I guess that's meeting the content of it all. And then finally, Reza has been good enough to, and frankly, a few people have thrown just a little bit of shade about the Mode B group not being up and running. So I appreciate the camaraderie kick in the pants. But yeah, there's a lot of work that's been done towards that. A lot of back and forth between me and Gabrielle, lots of conversations. Maurice recently sent me something that fits really nicely. And Reza has a presentation or a kind of research project already mapped out. We just even gave us like a nice set of choices for periods to kind of hone in on. And I think, given the actual differences and the way that, the different states in the region are relating to what's happening right now, trying to understand how those states operate and their relationship to the other modes that are also very important to what's going on right now, would be very important to clarify. So I realize I covered a lot of ground, but didn't really have much in way of rhetorical drive at the moment to go deep on things. So please ask questions or anything. And at this point, if either, I know Fatima posted about some stuff with her place where she writes for, and I know Reza's got thoughts. So if Fatima or Reza want to add anything in particular before we move to the general conversation, I'd want to invite them to do that. Otherwise, I'm good to just move on to talk.
I think people in the chat room want to know the name of the thinker you said you were reading. You're muted, but
Yeah. I think it's Ali Shariardi. Yeah, I mean, I think I just learned about him, but I think he's like incredibly famous over there. So like, this is for the Westerners. This is an invitation, just to be clear.
Right. I mean, he was a prominent figure before 1979 revolution. But he's not that popular now anymore. Okay, you need feedback in terms of the plan. I think I need a little bit of time, but I mean, it was too much information. I think the next step would be, a good next step would be for you to present it in the form of writing somewhere here or in our chat.
You know, I did take some not some quick notes, but just to get a feel, at least for some of what was being said. And while things are being put down in the chat, I think that first of all, I think it's really not only uh welcoming, but I think it's really important to. I think this is really something that could give us uh could put us on some right track. The idea of, taking Palestine as a perspective in the way to frame a series of social events, political struggles, because it was quite clear, and I think that the synthesizer metaphor was very apt in the sense that some sort of consistency was found through this whole episode or situation. And I know that it's definitely not the same how things echo in Brazil and in the US and in Europe. I mean, I think like being involved with uh with any form of association with Palestine definitely does not carry the same weight as in the US and in Europe. And I think for reasons that are very clear, especially the imperialist element in the US, and also the whole, I don't know what to say about what it's in Europe, but I do think that it would be something that would allow us to frame a lot of struggles. There's this Brazilian political thinker, militant, who's also associated to Gabriel, which is Sabrina Fernandes. She has this idea that the Palestinian movement, the Palestinian struggle, is one of the core struggles in the world, not only because of the level of oppression, which is horrifying, but also because it's an indigenous struggle in the most radical sense. There are many elements of the struggle, the Palestinian struggle, that help also see all the other struggles. So I do think, and I think it's an important, to take this to explore this. I think it would be important. I'd also like to say that I think like one really important issue that I think is a bit not, and I'm sorry if I'm taking this in another direction, but I think this is important, and this is like one of the challenges that we have. We are very good at having plans. I'm not saying that we are not good at executing plans, but we have like a hit rate percentage, a field goal percentage that is not always, in the. Let me just turn on the light 1 second. But I do think that the fact that we are coming to this question not out of a purely speculative movement, I do think it makes a lot of sense. And Reza, you asked, you know, like how to set up a mode and then the research on a mode and, you know, for help. And I was really thinking how, in a sense, we still have to develop like a culture on setting these side channels, you know, because I do think that one of the biggest moves that we can do as an org is also to decentralize meetings from Monday meetings. I do think Discord is going to have a big step in this, you know. I'm optimist on this. And I do think also I think having the book at hand is also something that helps that. But I mean, I think it's very I think one of the biggest difficulties in getting things started for mode B is the fact that unlike mode A and mode C, which I think with pretty clearly, even if it's, you know, tentative, even if it's not exhausted, even if it's far from being drawn up completely, we have a pretty good idea that intuitionist logic helps us see a lot about what goes on mode C, as the same as the exploration into paraconsistent logic helps us understand a lot of what's going on in mode A. And when we look at mode B, we can't even tell if the state is something that is connected to mode B, if the state is something that is expressed in mode B in a certain way. You know, there are lots of discussions, I think, about mode B where we don't know where to get started, you know. And I do think that being able to establish a channel, not only a Discord channel, but, you know, a constant forum for where people interested in mode B can do presentations, discuss on a regular basis, even if it's like, you know, every week or not, or every month or so. I think it's very important because there is no blueprint for establishing an alternative research channel. I mean, me, I was talking to Renzo about his presentation because I think his presentations on the economy of social conflicts was very important. And I think it was important to be in the group. So we just like said, "Well, let's get your slides. Let's just have meetings where we talk about them." And then Vitor, you know, we were on the Discord talking and then he just entered the meeting. So it was very natural, you know. Fatima joined a bit and also Gabriel. But basically, I think there's this movement of at the same time, you know, taking some initiative and at the same time doing this initiative in public, you know. And I think this is a good step. And I think Reza, like just taking the time to sort out this discussion that you mentioned in Discord, I think it's a good starting place, you know. And also John's discussions also, I think the idea of making of bringing the discussion through Palestine, I think it helps a lot. So I mean, just wanted to start off with this just this like more technical things, because I do think that since we don't have a blueprint, we have to do this also experimental, if you know, tentatively, because we it's not like we mode C and A. No, they were done in completely different forms, you know, how the discussion started. So I think this is something that we're still developing, but I think, man, I really do think that that we have, like, you know, a motivation to go through it. And I completely agree with the fact that maybe our framework can help, you know, to map out, I think, the points for technological extension of BDS. I think that's a really good way to frame it. And I'm very curious, and this is something that some of us in Rio are going to bring, like, eventually, because Gabriel even said it in the Monday meeting, because this is something we've been talking about. We want to bring to the group what we've been working on, the common space of organization, because it's a small experimental model of what organization internationalism can do, you know. Of course, it's at a very local level, but this is an attempt to make not only a place where we can learn about organizational practices, but an attempt to see how can we make different organizations connect, you know. And I think when you have the extension of BDS as a sort of, not a goal, but as something at mind, I really do think it helps choosing not only what you're going to do, but also which organizations would you like to get involved and to discuss and to bring into this. So I do think this is, and as I said, it's a lot, but I know that you brought it all, so we could unpack it together.
Yeah, and on the technical stuff, I think at this point, everyone should be able to do everything Rafael just described in terms of opening up channels, pinning things in channels. You should be able to both create and destroy threads for side conversations. You should be able to both link particular messages and particular channels. You should be able to invite people. Few other things, but yeah, as always, if there are particular things other than like the literal kill switch you want access to, hit me up.
Technical question on that. When I look at two of the channels, Imminence of Truths and the social media thing, there's still dots on them for me, and I think that means they're private channels, because that's the only two things, that's the only thing I can think of that the two of them have exclusively in common. I think Dennis said that it was deliberate as a temporary measure for the social media one. It's not deliberate for the Imminence of Truths, so if you're able to fix that, please do.
Yeah, mine can be public now since it's Monday, so. Okay, I can also destroy and recreate my channel.
Oh, really? Okay, let me see.
But it would be useful to know if we can, you know, go from private to public,
Yeah, just give me a second before.
even if it's an admin thing, because I think there might be situations where this might be useful.
Agreed. Yeah, don't wait on me though. I can do that if
Hi. I just wanted to add a few ideas to John's proposals. First, I'd like to suggest that we just like take a break from the sense of urgency, because like I remember the meeting we had in Beirut with Gabriel, and I remember one comrade was like all the time insisting that we should be doing something and that the crisis is getting harder and harder and so on. And like one of the insightful remarks he had is that we are actually doing something. So I think this conversation in itself, everything that has been going on in the past 2 weeks is a sign of how we're moving towards this path. And this is what I meant by saying that we don't need to be doing something else to be doing something meaningful or useful or whatever. And there's something related to Khalidi's book, not to cancel Khalidi, but like I think that we can take our time to grasp the history of Palestine and the region, each on their own pace. It would be interesting to strategize a collective research group on this that can be working on a slow pace. Like we don't need I'm not really sure about like organizing a national event with the Palestinian. I'm not sure if it's the Palestinian Youth Movement or another one, because I still think that as STP, we need to take our time to really make sense. I don't know how to use the right words here, but like I was really inspired by Comrade Riza's suggestion. I'm still trying to catch up with the studies and research done by the comrades here. I started with Karatani's book, left the SCP's book aside for a while just to grasp this. And I've been reading about Lebanon's history of political economy, more southern Lebanon, and I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff that SCP can I don't know, articulate around this, and maybe this can develop in a long-term research that doesn't need to be the main priority for everyone in STP, but more in a decentralized way, as Rafael put it, and like this can be done with like we invite people from different backgrounds or like expertise to give their perspective, and yeah, I think that's it. And the same thing goes for studying the Islamic resistance movements. That's why I think it's really interesting to start with Iran, because like this is directly related to Lebanon and to Palestine, especially the Islamic Jihad, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other factions. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I just want to follow that up with, I totally agree with Fatima's suggestion to take our time, and I think that's related to the comment I made in my statement also about our categories, our concepts, and because I get the sense that you know, maybe our concepts are useful in some ways already, but I think they haven't really come alive in terms of this particular situation and the case studies we're trying to, like the one that Reza brought up also. So I think taking our time also means like sifting through not only the history, the literature, but also the stuff that we've already come up with, and seeing which parts of it are useful and which parts are not. So it's like a period of digesting everything we've worked on in this new context. And yeah, I think that'll be really fruitful for us. So, and also like on the topic of like offering something to other organizations, I'm not saying we can't do that right now, but like I feel like because we're so disoriented, right? As of last week, I feel like the whole group experienced a disorientation. I don't think we're at a point where we can really offer anything to other groups. Maybe that's just me personally, but yeah, so I think those two things are related.
So John just said he lost his internet, but so I just like to time in. I agree with Fatima and Dennis that we don't need to rush into how we do it. I personally do not think that, but I mean I'm not you know, I'm not in the US I don't think it would be wise to establish like right now to have the event as a solidarity event, because I really do think that uh it is a really good opportunity to do the meetup and have a meetup that, even if it's, you know, connected to groups and militant groups that you guys are already connected, uh, I think that having this local experience, I think it will be more fruitful, because I do think that it's an opportunity to strengthen, you know, the ties inside the group. And but I don't know, I see what you said, Dennis, and I do agree in a sense with Fatima that we need to catch our breath, you know. But I do wonder if it's, you know, I think that's the, of course we have to to take some time, you know, not to act out, you know, like in a rash manner very quickly, as if we have to get back at something. I don't think that there's a fault in a sense, but I don't know if you are also bringing up something that was in your statement about, you know, a bit of a insecurity about how our concepts can help deal with situations, because I don't know, I get the sense that we have this like medium to long term vision of being an organization that deals with other organizations. And even though I agree, like we might not need to go to the, you know, like, oh, we need to do this for tomorrow and we need to deal with these specific organizations. I also think that having the chance to connect with other organizations, like maybe with less expectations, it's something that's gonna be vital for catching our breaths, you know. Because I'm more and more convinced that when dealing with these borders, we get to learn more and also to refine whatever it is that we seem to be doing, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
No, I was finished.
Yeah, I think you know, I don't want to slow down any of the things we have going in terms of connecting with other orgs. I think that's still a great project and trajectory, you know. Also like local meetups, I'm all for that. I think I just mean the idea of telling, you know, a Palestinian movement or a group that we have something to offer right now is like maybe premature in terms of concepts. Of course, we could be there to learn from them and to form connections, but I think yeah, we need to do a period of digestion of our own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But you know, I think this is, yeah, I think this is like the weird part, because I completely agree with you that like in any sense, you know, going to movements as if you know, we have something to offer, it's a bit weird, and especially like in this moment. But I do think that, you know, like just like you said, you know, just I'm agreeing with you. I think that uh inviting movements and people from movements to talk and discuss, and maybe this is something that's a bit different to do online. I don't know, we have to think about this. But I am convinced that even if we don't say like, if we say to them, look, we just want to hear from you, I think we are interested in such specific, at such a specific point of view, which is the organizational point of view, that I do think discussions can be fruitful, even if we don't put that weight, which I agree with you. I think it's not the time. The back.
Yeah, I just think the example of last week for me, it was like, if we had suddenly switched to using those concepts in that discussion, I think it would have made me feel like, okay, yeah, these concepts are useful, you know, to talk about Palestine and Zionism and things like that. And I think we, for good reasons, we didn't go to those concepts. We didn't, you know, start to talk about mode A, B, C. We didn't talk about, you know, technology or anything like that. I mean, we were talking about solidarity, right? Practical solidarity. And I guess there seems to be a split between the practical solidarity discussion and then also the theoretical stuff we've been developing. And I'm still trying to figure out where the articulation between those things is in the group. Like the new projects we proposed seem to revolve around like educating ourselves. And yeah, it feels like we're preparing ourselves for something and not so much like we're already there, you know. I don't know what the rest of the group thinks about that. But
I'm not sure if I understood you well, but when I read your statement, I've been thinking that it's not that the concepts that were developed in STP weren't useful in this conversation, but maybe we needed this conversation to happen so we can reflect back on the discussion itself, but also on the whole topic and like from the point of view of organization. Here I am trying to use our vocabulary, but how do we understand solidarity, practical solidarity? Because like one of the things that I've been struggling to put, at least in English, and to make it understandable, is that these proposals to not like completely shift our research, but to develop it in a way like, you know, I'm trying myself to get myself more immersed. I know I need time, I need to learn and so on. I'm thinking of people who can also like add to this collective yeah, right. I was just reading Bova's message. So what I'm trying to say is that I think what like from my personal experience by reading SCP's work, there's a lot that relates to my experience here living in this region and learning about its history. But I think that this is just the kind of work that will be more and more developed in the future. I don't know if this is an optimistic point of view, but yeah.
yeah, no, I'm all for optimism. I think we need some optimism for sure. I do think that we're not that far away from, you know, making you know, a conceptual connection between the solidarity question and then the you know, the other concepts we have, right? I think we're very close to making that connection. We just we need to have a conversation about that, yeah, because like I just think we need a few meetings maybe to take stock of the things we're learning on the one hand, and then the stuff we've already developed. Maybe just like, discussing the case, like John was saying about centering our discussion on Palestine instead of Brazil for a little bit. I'm actually interested, John, in what you think that would entail, because it almost feels like we never explicitly said in the group, let's center our discussions on Brazil. It just kind of, I think it's just because, we have so many Brazilian comrades in our group that it's naturally kind of, and then the peripherization thesis, kind of was informed from Latin American social theory. So, but yeah, I'm interested in seeing what does it mean to shift our group's case studies there to Palestine.
Yeah, I think is like a cop out as it sounds. I feel like when I was thinking about it, the main the main I guess issue would just be to have members think about it in whatever research capacities they're doing. Because I mean, absolutely, it's the case that I guess you could say like we came to the peripheral thesis because like we happen to have a lot of Brazilian folks in the group, and that was something that if we'd had another preponderance elsewhere in the world, we may have started with another couple of theses. Whereas now we're like intentionally and with quite a bit more exteriority doing that. So I don't have like any particular, like, I just think that would be something that we'd all just attempt to do in our own way in attempting to flesh out our theories, whether that's like trying to bring in current events or historical, or just kind of even just tearing with the fact that if in the Brazilian case, the problem that kind of came up was precisely periphery, it's in the case of Palestine that the problem we're now addressing is that of solidarity. Like, so even if we're not, we don't have any Palestinian members and we're mostly very far removed from that, like the singularity of the situation such that we're now confronting solidarity as a problem theoretically and politically is a Palestinian one. So I think even just remembering that would be an important thing. But yeah, I would, that there'd be a lot of experimenting precisely on that front there. Also, my roommates got puppies and they just knocked over the Wi-Fi. And I don't know how effective my barricading will be. So if I drop out again, that's why. But also, I think I missed quite a few important critiques of what I said. So if anyone wants to fill me in on in chat or something of what I need to respond to, that'd be appreciated.
I think the main thing mentioned was if there is a need for it, I mean, the sense of urgency, I think Fatima said this, and then I think Dennis, and I think for different reasons, but not incompatible reasons, Fatima, if I recall correctly, talked about the need to also understand STP space and not to confuse an urgency on a certain matter as an object of attention to the fact that something can be done on a time that is not really our time scale, and if I understand correctly, and I think this is something that makes sense because whatever we have to offer, I think also depends on this brewing, there's a brewing period. And I think that if I understood correctly, that's what she pointed out, so as something that we should take into account. And Dennis, on the other hand, was more concerned on considering the fact that the situation that started all this and the difficulty we had in going through it is also related maybe to a certain need to better to catch our breaths and to better work on our concepts, but also related to the fact that we had, or we are in the midst of a crisis of sorts, you know. In the sense, if I repeated it correctly, Dennis, please correct me if not, but
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah, I think we went through a little bit of a crisis, but also just like a lot of things we never really talked about or didn't really address, you know, in terms of like solidarity and our positioning, and you know, taking some positions that will stop us from taking other positions later on. You know, like I feel like we kind of in the past in SDP, our style was always to like leave as many doors open as possible, because we were wanting to. We thought that in order to attract as many organizations as possible, we needed to not, you know, be too dogmatic, basically, to be more flexible in our positioning on the left, you know, and to minimize the kind of, I think, infighting or, you know, useless fighting that might happen. So I feel like we left so many doors open, and then I think this past week or past few weeks, it's been about like, okay, no, some doors need to be closed, and you know, we do need to take some stronger positioning, especially if we want, like, as a condition of connecting to other groups. You know, to connect to another group doesn't mean you always leave every door open. It means you leave specifically the doors open that you want for that group to connect to you, if that makes sense, you know. Anyway, yeah, so I think you're right, Rafael, like, and you summarized what I said well. But yeah, the thing I was saying about before about our concepts not being fitting to the situation, because we didn't reach for it. You know, we didn't reach for the concepts, even though I'm not saying, you know, these concepts should be thrown away. They're not the first thing that we thought of. And I think that tells us something, right? That we need to do some thinking about those.
yeah,
Yeah.
on this, just can I just so I can address this to the group, because I think that's what Dennis said is very important, and I would like to also hear how people feel, because on this point I disagree a bit with Dennis, because at least from I mean, of course we did not, as I don't disagree with the fact that in the meeting and as a group, and when we were dealing, even in the initial messages that Fatima presented, I agree completely that none of these concepts were used or mobilized so that we could get a clear understanding, etc. But I would like to know if people, like, at least privately or outside the group, they did consider, because at least for me, I don't think that was the case. This was something that really, I think I got a bit more tranquil, more, how do I say, like, you know, not that everything was fine and dandy, but I think I felt some of the burden of the situation off, due to the fact that I could map it out according to the very concepts, to the organizational point of view that we've been developing, you know. So, but I do agree that this doesn't mean that we are like, these concepts are completely mature, but I would also like to hear from other comrades, if that was the case, if they agree, if they don't disagree. But sorry, John, I interrupted you.
I was gonna say, I thought it was pretty telling that of the pieces I read, I think the one that most explicitly used our theory to analyze the situation was Maurice's paper. Who's also someone who's most outside of the particularities of the situation as well as the group, which might have as much to bear on like what we reach for as anything, because we do a lot of, you know, case studies and theorizing, and even when we are looking at our perspective, it's normally in the nice retroactive space of reflection. I personally, I know that not everyone agrees on this. I personally have felt that a lot of our work is much more in Baduvian terms in the realm of science and politics. So I'm not entirely surprised we didn't reach for scientific instruments in the middle of a political struggle. I think some of our theories, like our diagnoses of the of like disalignment and stuff, are much more explicitly political statements. But when you look at like the modes and the logics and stuff, I'm not entirely sure that that's their place all the time, is to be the first thing that you reach for in a situation like this. But I think that yeah, so that's just I'm not necessarily sure that we're holding it to a fair standard by saying that. But I also think that it's interesting that the person that could do it the most easily, it seemed, or at least, I mean, not to take away from the labor of thought, but for whom he clearly did reach for it, was someone outside the situation. So I think maybe we need to take that and kind of look at that as well. Like, what is it exactly we should be reaching for? Is it that we're lacking in our conceptual apparatus, or is there are certain more explicitly political things that we're lacking that are kind of in a different department per se? I'm not entirely sure if that's taking the weight off our theory is too much, but I do think that there are kind of like shades of expectation to consider on this one. Yeah. Also, just to clarify, one other thing I heard coming back in from the puppy incident, was something about taking stuff to the movements. I'm wondering if that's the argument about like coming outside in with like suggestions being cringy thing, or is there another issue with that?
Yeah, with movements, I think Fatima and I both, I think Fatima made a more general comment, which is to just take our time and not get caught up in the urgency of acting. But then I think we both also, were totally for, I think, connecting to different groups. It's not about whether we connect or don't connect. It's just for me and personally, it was positioning ourselves as more learning from these groups and less as that we would be bringing anything conceptually, because again, tied into the question of the conceptual versus the practical.
Mhm.
We don't have, like, we're not sure if our concepts mean anything in this case, right? So, but then, you know, Raphael kind of disagreed on some level that perhaps our concepts do have purchase here. And yeah, I think it's just a matter of us like figuring out in what way.
Totally. All right, cool. I do want to address that one. Some of the other stuff I more or less agree with. So, you know, I'll just be antsy over on my own corner. But all right, I do actually have some thoughts tied specifically to this. One, I think that this is one of those places where positionality is significant. Like, there are things I think that can be seen within the US, or vulnerabilities or whatnot, that are important, that aren't necessarily outside of the scope. I mean, I know we haven't been doing inside of meetings, but actually I've been talking with Gabrielle as part of our Mode B conversation about the weirdness of US imperialism for the last few months. It's been one of our main kind of case studies. I think there's a lot that can be said already within our terms about both what the kind of system is that the BDS movement is fighting against, but also why it's vulnerable to the particular tactics of BDS. Why is it that boycott, divestment, and sanctions punch so powerfully in the way that they do? Has everything to do with the way capitalism is organized. And I think we do have a way of understanding that already. I think that's already intact. I think there's so much when we look at our analyses of how spaces are composed and how these kind of like chains of production are built and how they kind of coalesce into certain parts. Those are the parts that get kind of like, you know, singled out and targeted in BDS. I think that there's a lot of, I think, tools that are immediately adjacent to the formalisms that we already use from topology and from category theory. Some of the work, what's his name? I don't have the book inside of me, so I'm not going to remember it, but he's an applied topologist, and he's used toposes for statistical research. There's things there that, and I'm not proposing that level of technical buy-in from the group at that kind of thing, but I do think that there's a lot of stuff that would be more or less of the same kind of research that we already do on all kinds of other things in terms of our kind of technological, topological approach. I also think in terms of practice, we do already have a practice of studying things and applying to our theory that we don't understand. So we've picked up certain movements or certain kinds of problems and spent a couple months on them as an organization deliberately and come out the other end with a better or worse theoretical approach. One of the main ones was precisely like the question of like, how do we interface with other groups? We kind of kept returning to that. And at first we were largely building off of the experience of the CSII. And then as we accumulate our own experiences, those got kind of introduced into the framework. And as we developed more ideas of organizational ecologies and environmental logics and whatnot, we began to incorporate that into our understanding. So I think like while the subject matter would be changing, I don't really think that how we go about doing it is any more or less than we've already been doing. As far as the question of like going into movements and listening, you know, I think that's a priority absolutely when it comes to dealing with Palestinian resistance and the broader kind of attacks on Arab and Muslim and the various kind of everything that's under the aegis. But I don't entirely agree about that with BDS, because BDS is oftentimes it's a much more like it's a follower in a sense, right? Like it's what Palestinians have called for the rest of the world to do. Now there are Palestinians involved in BDS all the time, but in another sense, it's already a collectivized movement. I'm not like I mean, you want to respect people that are already doing stuff no matter what, like regardless of the movement, but like I don't necessarily feel like we would be outsiders going into the BDS movement. It's a universal call. And some of us have been involved also. That's the other thing. I've been involved in BDS on and off for a while. So we also have kind of like inroads into that. So I think that there's a lot in terms of not wanting to, and I don't want to either, to be clear, pivot to do things we haven't done. I do think that there's a lot that we've already done before that can be kind of refocused, I guess would be my approach. But yeah, those would be my general responses to that.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think that's really good points. I think, yeah, I think you dispelled a bit of my general anxiety about the whole thing. I feel clearer, yeah, like it's pretty obvious we're not trying to you know, come into a space and like say we know we have the answers or something like that. It's more like we are, revisiting some of these concepts, and in this new context. But, so the thing you mentioned about BDS is really interesting. I think, I'm just gonna share my screen so we can maybe whiteboard something. Raphael, could you give me the screen share ability? Oh, thank you. So would you agree, would you guys agree? I don't know if you can see this on my screen, but that if we were gonna try to map out in our monster diagram here of the K diagram here, that BDS kind of falls in this attacking the C structure. Okay, but would you say BDS is kind of like all three? Because I was thinking like what could we kind of put in these two spaces, right?
I totally think it's especially the B and the D. When you get into sanctions, you do get into states interceding.
Mhm.
But most times you're actually like the most common deployment is a B or D, right? Like it's very seldom that you actually get a government to straight up sanction, but you do get entities to divest and you do get entities to stop buying. And those are purely like mode C operations.
Yeah.
I mean, Hamas, that's mode B. They are
Right.
a governmental organization with like their classic state-esque power. And I think, you could say like Palestinian culture, the watermelon, that's mode A, right? Like just all the ways that like life is constantly transforming itself in resilience. I mean, the watermelon is like both one of those, what do you call it? It's like both like a symbol of, but it's an example of itself at the same time. It's like a symbol of the culture, but it's also an example of how the culture had to take a flag and turn it into something that could be detected, but also pass. And it's just, yeah, there's just so many things like that.
Yeah, I like that. Fatima?
No, let's not go for the watermelon thing because like that's another, I don't know, myth that has been spread around. But like I can share an article by a Palestinian researcher who like told the weird story about the watermelon. So yeah, let's not go for it.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for stopping us there. Yeah, but I think, there's something, I think mode A is probably the most vague one to me here. I think, John, I totally agree with Hamas being a mode B. I think maybe also the ICJ thing that South Africa brought up. Is kind
Isn't mode A the fact that since it's not, there's no recognition in as a state in classical logic, a lot of the interactions between Palestinians and other movements has to deal with the fact that I don't know. I keep coming back to the fact that there's a lot of migration issues involved, of belonging and not belonging, of being there, not being there. That I think it might still be vague, but I wonder if it touches upon these issues.
of like diaspora type stuff.
Yeah, I think the diaspora, which also puts to place, the relations between these diasporic Palestinians, where a lot of the alliances and the connections to be made maybe connect to the fact that in a part people are Palestinians, but also part of their lives is in another place, but that does not mean that they are disconnected. And there's I'm thinking about this specifically because there have been many news at least in Brazil about the Palestinian Brazilians, and the efforts to get Palestinians Brazilian to safety, etc. And then when when they talk and when they discuss about Palestine, it's never something that's, you know, either here or there, you know. So it's something as if, you know, the fact that you are in two places at once is also the fact that might help the struggle in some sense to put some pressure in external politics or whatever. But I'm just riffing here. It may be gibberish.
No, that sounds good to me. That makes sense.
You can even connect that to the BDS system, you know, like people join the BDS also connected to the A mode in a sense.
Sorry, good. What is the connection to BDS again?
Oh yeah, I was thinking about the people who organize BDS also, you
Mhm.
know.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, because yeah, I think this is interesting because, you know, we've been talking for the past year or so, this idea of like the organizational perspective, right? This org thing, which is like takes place somewhere else, right? It's not part of the world as it is. It's like a standpoint you can occupy, from which you kind of see these different things as you know, you see these different struggles happening, and then you can kind of view them as part of an ecology, view them as part of some uh, you know, organizational phenomena. So I think yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're after right now, is if we want to center our theory around the case study of Palestine, then we should be doing things like this, right? We should be trying to say, you know, from the organizational standpoint, what are we, what can we see that's a bit different? Um, different from other struggles and other situations, like, you know, these three things are just some examples of things that are articulating themselves right now. Yeah, but I don't really have any answers there. I just very barely, based on what John was saying, I was thinking about this diagram and how we can use it to organize some of these ideas. Okay, anyway, I'll stop sharing.
No, I think I'm sorry, because I was writing, I was checking
Okay,
I was checking the working through political organization. And you know, there's a part we discuss in the end about the different forms, you know, the organizational point of view. It also allows us to, the social world appears through also the struggles against the social world, you know. So there's the struggle against exploitation, which is more economic in the mode C sense, the struggle against segregation, which is more in the mode A, and then the struggle against expropriation, you know, which is in the mode B. And there are also the corresponding revolutionary tactics for each, you know. So when we're talking about a struggle against exploitation, against mode C, types of domination, there is a strategy of correlation of forms, of forces, sorry. And the BDS movement, from that point of view, you know, any type of boycott, economic boycott, seems like a gathering of forces that is in a sense an assault on capital, you know. And there's also the insurrectionist, which is like linked to mode B, which you can tie, you know, to the attempt to formalize a state to formalize a state, because I was this is not connected, but this got me thinking. I was reading about dual power the past few days on Toscano's new book, and there's this really clear fact that the monopoly of violence can only be in one group's hands, you know. So in a sense, you know, there's this in a lot of sense, the armed struggle against the occupying forces, it's a struggle against, you know, the monopoly being the hands of a colonial invader, you know, against the settler violence. So it does seems to fit also in that aspect. But Morey, which is we talked about the problem of segregation, you know, and dual power, you know, as a form of combating this. It seems very clear that at least one of the struggles, one of the main forces against Palestine is the enormous strength that is spent in trying to flatten Palestinian resistance out of its plurality, you know. And in a sense, I do wonder if this involves also the struggle against segregation, you know, because people are profiled. So I think there's the racial aspect, because the indigenous plurality, the plurality connected to Palestine is flattened out in a way that puts another struggle at hand. Segregation as an attack on mode A from B side, appropriation for export as an attack on mode A from C. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, this is actually something that I've been talking to Michael specifically about Brazil, but it does seem that segregation is done through mode B, you know. Racial profiling necessitates the state for even a goal which is work related, you know, to building a racialized workers stratum. But sorry, I just saw the monster diagram Dennis put, and it got me thinking.
Okay, yeah, just sharing again one more thing. Yeah, I think we can go back to the monster diagram, and I totally agree. I think the segregation as kind of a mode B origin, but then it affects or propagates itself into the other modes. Maybe we can use the in the diagram we have like the B plus C and the B plus A also, right? The hybrid ones, we could use that to talk about segregation. And then the other thing that John brought up. But I was going to say like I feel like also another diagram that I was thinking about, and I think is very relevant, is this conservative versus political mediation, and how we were talking about, you know, if you take a certain standpoint, if the individual takes a certain standpoint, then they see the social world differently, right? And what you were saying, Raphael, about flattening all these different movements and the nuances, flattening them to just like, you know, Hamas, for example, or flattening them to just one particular viewpoint, as if there was not a plurality. That is a conservative mediation, right? Whereas a political mediation would be something that, like, taking the org standpoint and seeing the different aspects of the movement. So I wonder if that is an inroad for us, like a way in, using some of these concepts that we were building last year.
Also, there's something that I've been thinking about. I'm not sure if I'm gonna make sense here, but I've been thinking about there's Gaza and there's the political economy of Gaza, and there's a different political economy in the West Bank and the Palestinian refugee camps. The official Palestinian refugee camps that are managed by the Palestinian authorities and the UNRWA. And yeah, like there's this different relation to the state in the West Bank and in Gaza and in the and like diaspora is still like not a one diaspora itself, like there's so yeah, I'd like to hear more from Comrade Reza when he starts to speak about the pseudo-nation. I think this the pseudo-modern nation. I'm not sure if I got this right. So anyway, I think that's really interesting how we're trying to tie everything together. And I'm not sure if we can start like a channel and or like share documents and start, I don't know, putting our thoughts there, building a small library, like just to revisit and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Yeah, we can take some of these different different angles of it, attacking the problem. And I think, yeah, if we could find a way to glue them together, that would be nice.
One thing we could do on just like a technical note is we could start a channel, or we could use it's pretty empty, like the Palestine Solidarity, which I think we can rename things too. But we could essentially, what we could do there is any documents or text we could still share in the repo, and then we could make either like a thread in there where we just like link it to that, so that we can have all the references in there, but we're not duplicating it. We have them all still saved in the same place. But that seems like a good place to start. Coalesce. Yeah, whoever the histories are of the non-canceled folks you want to recommend to us, Fatima. And anything else that we have in that area? Also, Fatima, I saw that you posted about the public source. This might be a good time, since just if you wanted to bring that up, because we may have channels and stuff to build and whatnot for that too.
Yeah, basically it was just like a call if anyone is interested in writing something. But yeah, like you as we spoke yesterday, I'm gonna get back to you regarding the ideas we shared. And yeah, I'm not sure who's how you want to talk about it, or like would you like to wait for me until I'll
Oh no,
let
I
you-
just meant in general if you wanted to make the same announcement now that you already made.
No, I think it's there. If
Oh,
anyone
okay.
yeah.
Never mind then. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just
Yeah, I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's all good. It's all good. My bad. So yeah, so go check out that announcement. There are other ways to have conversations and talk, and whatnot. It's in general, I believe. So yeah, yeah, we can start a channel. We can kind of have a thread dedicated to sources there. And then projects that come up like the public source or anything else, we can also link in there so that we can kind of keep it all tied together for folks. So yeah, I can if I can start creating those channels after the meeting sometime tonight. I'm gonna try not to put you on the spot as disastrously, Reza, but if you did want to say anything, you don't have to now, but I'd just love to hear from you whenever you feel like it. And if you don't want to say anything, you can tell me to screw off.
No, that's fine. Thanks so much. Actually, I noticed that a channel for MeetB was created, and I put a bunch of comments there. Part of it is the repeat of what I put in the general channel. So I get it that we need this channel for ModeB, but what I'm more interested in is to start a research effort around the periods that I discussed. Well, to give you a background, about a couple of years ago, shortly after we studied Karatani, I guess we studied Karatani in 2019, 2020 in our collective. I did not have a chance to do that with the collective. So we have a reading group in Toronto, and we read Karatani, 2 major books by Karatani in Toronto. And I shared with the group some of the notes that I gathered, which is really like a review of the book or a companion to the book. I shared it some time ago. But in this group, as we went through the structure of world history, we noticed that Karatani gives us a lot of tools to understand countries like Iran, periphery, semi-periphery. His method of analyzing the movement from mode B to mode C really matches the situation in Iran. In mode B, it had strong state-dominant society, pretty much like the southern part of Europe. The countries south of the River Rhine, which basically became semi-periphery in mode C. That, and also he does not speak of Iran in his book by any means, but the examples he made in the relationship between China and Japan and so on and so forth, in that shift from mode B to mode C, really matches Iran and the surrounding countries. What he does not develop is, when he focuses on mode C, what is missing from his framework is, from what I see, which I think what I'm proposing to do is what will happen, or what has happened, what happened to periphery states after the domination of mode C and the expansion of colonialism. He describes colonialism a little bit, the movement of colonialism to imperialism, the development of the comprador bourgeois in countries like Vietnam, in China, in Far East. But none of the examples that he provides focuses on countries like Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi, where their state basically all of the sudden come to possess enormous amount of riches because of their natural resources. And that helped those mode B style huge governments to continue their domination and basically squash the free market economy in those countries, and then move those free market economy to bourgeois comprador kind of establishments or outfits. I think a work in that area would not only develop the framework in Karatani's case from a theoretical perspective, which is not there, is not present in Karatani. I think it's a huge contribution to the movement in Iran. As you know, is a country that is ripe with social movements. I don't know where I saw that, but I agree with it, that Iran is like the France of Middle East, is a country with a lot of revolutions. The 1905, 1911 revolution, the revolutions during 1953, the revolution in 1979, and the revolution, none of these revolutions happened in any surrounding countries in that area. And that is because of a unique situation that Iran is in, the cultural and even religious fight that have been happening in that country. Is always ripe for social movements, but there are not enough intellectual guidance to make sense of these movements, and also be able to provide a kind of direction for future. So that is one sense, and the other sense is obviously it's an excellent case study for applying our framework. So these are my motivations, especially number one, which is the dire need for this development, theoretical development, and be able to not only, so I mentioned three things: a theoretical supplement to what Karatani provides, which is a gap in particular Mode B countries with natural resources that help the government to continue elements of Mode B organization in a society that is out of place, out of date, which Karatani does not have. Number two is the requirement, the dire requirement for providing a framework like that. And number three is what we can do in terms of the relationship of this with our own framework. So I put some of these comments in that channel that was somebody kindly created. And I don't know what the next step is, whether people need to subscribe to that, and they would like to start a different meeting. Obviously, John mentioned, or John or Raphael mentioned that Monday meeting is not the vehicle for this for these kind of channels. Like you guys have done this for Mode A, mainly in Portuguese. I don't know what your experience is when you guys are meeting. So I don't know what the next steps are. Obviously, we need resources. We need to gather resources. We need to provide reading lists. We need to agree on what to read, which period to focus on, and so forth. So these are the kind of things that I thought that you guys with more experience in basically conducting these researches can help us to bootstrap this effort.
That's amazing. I'm just behind all of it. I don't have anything else to say except yeah. let's get going.
You know, just so we don't, because I think all that you said, Reza, I mean, I think it's it's incredible and extremely generous on your part to having the desire to research and to share this, because I do think that it's really important. But since I can't get the utilitarian bug out of my mind, unfortunately, Mode C is ever pervading. I do think this would be a good opportunity. I mean, because I do think that like we have this prospect of the book, and Mode B is certainly one of the most under theorized modes we have, you know, and it might be a good opportunity to use this space, you know, not that, you know, there has to be this formal elaboration of Mode B, but having a channel, and I mean channel in the sense of, you know, people interested, people meeting regularly to work on these issues. I mean, I think this is something that could also be good, because we do need a development of Mode B. And you know, I think our preferred method is you know, Mode B isn't developed from the head of Thomas Hobbes, you know, it's developed from concrete political experiments. So I think touching on this will go a great length to start this, you know.
Yeah, I mean, from the perspective of a pragmatic or maybe down to earth question that is facing social movement in Iran. You guys know that in 2022 there was a big movement, Women, Life, Liberty, that happened in Iran, and since the end of 2022 it has subsided a bit, but it is still very active. The main question, if you will, I mean, the majority of people who are participating in this movement are Gen Z, and the interesting thing is that they are not there are Gen Z as well as ethnic people in West and in southeast of Iran that are brutally suppressed throughout history by any government before or after 1979 revolution. The point that I'm trying to make is that the characteristic of this movement is that they are not looking up to any available standard theory, be it Marxist, communist, socialist, or reactionary movements such as like the loyalists to the previous dynasty, and that is, from one side, makes this movement not to have a very clear agenda regarding what to do, which is the negative aspect. But from the positive side is that they are not an easy prey for the ideological orientations that would take this movement toward directions that are repeating the same mistakes as probably some of the mistakes that Arab Spring committed, or colored revolutions in the area committed, or the same historical experience that 1979 revolution had in Iran. This basically has made a demand for creating a new vision of where a country like Iran is heading toward. And the same thing Pakistan, for Iraq, for Saudi Arabia, for Kuwait, for Emirates, for Jordan, for Syria, a lot of countries in that area that have strong governments that are kind of disassociate. They have been able to disassociate themselves from the public because of the enormous wealth they have. They are not dependent on the their popularity or anything like that, because they are independently wealthy. Is a similar model. Now it is in Iran, like any other, like I said in episode of time, this has been translated into a active social movement, because Iran is a hotbed for these social movements in the area. But the question is not specific to Iran, and the model is not specific to Iran. And this model is what I was trying to say. I don't want to repeat what I said before. Is a dire need for the movement. And it is very, very easy to find comrades, militants who can come and provide input to that kind of dire need for us. If at some point of time, if you need that kind of testimonial, if you will. So all I was trying to say, the question is very, very pragmatic, very, very utilitarian, if you will, with respect to the demand that is happening right now in Iran and with the militant groups in Iran. So to put this in perspective, I put some comments. Please read my comments in the channel. If you have anything to add, please do. And my question is generally, what's the next step? What do you guys need? I mean, I'm working on several things right now. It's not like my only focus, but I'm very committed to this study, and I probably am the only Iranian in this collective. So I'm prepared to look for resources, to share those resources, but I do appreciate the theoretical help that the collective can provide, both in terms of the background, Karatani background, which, like I said, is not deep. Also similar studies that probably focus on similar things. If anybody is familiar with other theoretical framework that can help us develop these thoughts a little bit further, please, by all means. And basically, if you like to set up another meeting to brainstorm about how to move forward, by all means, I make myself available.
Thanks, Reza, for that. I had one idea on as far as next steps, which is in the Discord, if you could write the things that, just like you just said, the things you need from other people who want to participate. I feel like maybe that's a practice we could start. It's like when you create a new project in Discord, one of the first posts there should be what you would like, how you would like other people to contribute. If you have any ideas around that. I know you mentioned, like, you know, support around the theory or resources, you know. But yeah, I think that would be good practice for us, maybe to just list out like things we need at this stage.
Sure, I can put a few things together, and sure. Basically, the first thing is if there are a group of us, 2, 3 of us, if we can just meet and brainstorm, that would be the first thing that I think will take this farther. Because a lot of things that I said may be not clear if we want to brainstorm on those points. Like, for example, why Mode B, why Karatani, why Iran. I think those may be, I mean, they are very clear to me, but may not be clear to everybody. And some people may have different ideas. So if we are clear in terms of that direction, I think the questions will come after. If we can provide a common platform. So I think the first thing is that if people are interested in the project, if they identify who they are, we set something up and then we start brainstorming that, okay, so if we agree on this platform with major or minor tweaks, then what are the things that we need and what are the next steps? So it's a form of brainstorming. So the first thing to answer your question, I guess, Dennis, the first thing I think is required is for a group of people to come together and just have a brainstorming session.
Perfect. Yeah, so I think that's a great starting point. And you know, we have in the Discord, we have this new like calendar functionality. So you can schedule meetings outside of the Monday meetings through that.
Yeah, you can even use Discord for the meeting.
Yeah, you can have a meeting in Discord.
Yeah, that sounds good because I don't have Zoom. But the first thing is that, well, in order to book people, I need to know who is interested in doing such a research with me. So the first thing I will put here in the Zoom is that I like to set up a brainstorming session to advance this conversation, solidify this research agenda, and if whoever is interested, please raise your hand so I can set up that brainstorming session.
But Reza, can I just add something before? Because I think that one of the really hard things in our group, and I think this is because, I mean, this is the problem that we are involved in because we don't live in a communist society where we have the time. I tend to think that I don't know how you're seeing this, but there are like parallel interests that might inform and also bring these groups. I mean, because I think, man, the things that John brought today, the discussions on the history of Palestine and also the issues involved in thinking BDS and the imperialism of the US, you know, I think I don't know if that was what you're thinking, but I think like this is this like you two together, just for example, you know, it seemed like a very rich experience where one political experience can feed off the other, you know, because just for example, this is for how we've been doing it in Mode A. They're like 5 to 6 people right now, but none of them actually are in the same area, you know, of problems. So, for example, there's Gabriel, which is more connected to the discussion on the affinity logic, and grounding it into anthropological thought. There's Thiago, who is like, he's a real anthropologist, and he has like a whole set of discussions in Amerindian ethnography. He has like this whole knowledge, and so it really brings that to the table. I, for example, I focus more on this really specific area, which is Amerindian thought. Michael, he's interested not even in Amerindian. His connection to Modé is totally through the question of race and racializing politics. So I think like mixing together people who are maybe not as juxtaposed, but which can feed off each other. It like it. I think it will make the this specific research group tighter and maybe more consistent. You know. Because
And richer for
yeah,
that
yeah,
matter.
Richard. Because this is just some point that I didn't understand. If you wanted like a research which was like more broader, and you would be bringing in like the stuff from Iran, from the social struggles in Iran, which you mentioned, which I think is fantastic. Or if you thought it's no, I want to focus on Iran, because John at the beginning he was also, and John, please correct me if I'm wrong. You were like, no, let's do something that's focused on Palestine. And if the issues touch on each other, you know, for whatever reason, and I think the brainstorming is for that, because I do think like remembering Karatani, and I think you brought, man, this point of view that you brought about the peripherization on these specific states that are resource rich, and how this, I mean, it really complexifies our worldview. So, but this is my question: if it's like it's a broader project, or if it's a more restricted project, you know? Because I think if it's a broader project, it will be easier for people to glue in their interests, and then the discussion will naturally be coming back to the discussions.
Yeah, so if I understand your question, let me see if I can answer it in this way. I think the theoretical framework is not specific. The theory that we will develop will not be specific for Iran. Iran would be a case study for that theory. I think it will cover a whole slew of regions, countries, after countries that, unlike Iran, were created after the First World War by kind of Ottoman Empire dissolving. But they are more or less in the same situation. They struggle through the more or less same issues. A combination of, well, their issues were a little bit different, because when Ottoman Empire, I don't want to go through this, but the Ottoman Empire was the state that was dominant, Mode B state that was dominant and went away. When they went away, the elements that remained in regions such as Yemen, such as Saudi Arabia, such as the Gulf countries were mostly Mode A. But in Iran, it was different, because Iran was not affected by World War I, was not a country that was dominated by a foreign state. It was a state in Iran. And so the situation from that perspective is different in Arab countries than Iran. But the general orientation in terms of what I'm saying is not present in the theory in Karatani's framework is the same. Now, Iran is a rich case study, because the question is direst in terms of sense of urgency in Iran, because of the history, social movements, and so on and so forth in Iran. But again, the answer that this research could provide or could point to would be of tremendous use for all these countries in this region. Lebanon, for example.
Yeah, I think like understanding that this is a broader framework, but with with the contribution specific to researching Iran. I think when and like when you propose this brainstorming meeting, I think it's I think it's a good thing to highlight. And I think like Dennis said something that I wholeheartedly agree, which is we need to be more forthcoming, you know, like what we think we need on the research, what kind of help, because I think like we are a group of people who are very uh generous towards each other. So I think we don't take that too much into account, you know. And I think it's a good idea. And I think we can even like this is something that I've suggested, but I think like if we can start this movement, which is having like Monday meetings as also a space for small updates, you know, like having like 5 to 10 minutes where people from different research groups say, look, we've been doing this. If you want to get on with us, we're doing this right now. And I think this will this will really also help, you know, because I think we have a lot of people interested, and I think, man, it was like I'm very close to Fatima. I'm not on the I, I mean, I think I'd learn a lot, you know. But I just want to say, I'm not sure if Fatima said, I'm not sure I can contribute much on the theoretical level. I mean, come on. Uh, please, Fatima. But I think like when we get together and discuss, I mean, this is the space where contribution happens, which is I think what you want, Reza, right? A space where we can talk because everyone has different insights, and also, and I think this is important, you know, because when we like building the framework, building the theory, this is a collective effort, and nobody's gonna have all the tools, man. So I do think that it's really important to get this going, you know.
Okay, like I said, I will provide some. I put some of this. Let me go back. Think about it. I put some of this in the. Add this to my comments in mode B, and then my specific question is raise your hand so we can set up something and start our first meeting. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, totally want to be involved. And also I think like if we're going to be kind of shifting emphasis away from the Monday meetings per se, we got to remember, like, for example, I haven't really contributed much to mode C, but I've learned a lot and taken that into how I've done analysis for mode B. So I think like since the channels are going to be more places where a lot of these conversations are going to be happening, like I don't think we should be parsing it up and like making theory versus learning. Like we're all like we've all been involved in everything. It's just it's always been on Monday, so it hasn't felt in or out per se. But like now it's a bit more interactive. But we should all be, I mean, yeah, I think we should all feel comfortable doing that, asking questions, even asking very basic questions. Because honestly, sometimes you think you know something and then you don't. So right, like it's important to have those moments. Yeah. Anyway, but also very stoked, Reza. I love the direction. I'm definitely in. And I will have lots of questions and stuff for you in the coming week or two once my brain starts working again.
Not that I want to rush things, but I've been summoned by the rest of the family. So I think if there are no questions, I want to bid you adieu for now. And thank you very much. It's awesome, and I'm really, really happy that I have the opportunity to come back more actively to the group. It's been a while. Thank you very much, comrades.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much,
Reza.
Reza. Really happy with the stuff you're sharing.
Thank
See
you.
you, Reza.
So there's just something that she said, John, that I think is really important. I mean, especially because the aspect about the division between, you know, learning and contributing. I think that this is like the other side of something that really is. I think there's a discipline where you have to discipline yourself to ask questions, you know, because when questions are not asked, we have no idea on what level everyone is. So I think this is really good. I don't know if that was like what you were aiming at, but at least for me, I think it's an important discipline to cultivate in the group.
Yeah, I think so. It's also helpful sometimes if you already know the answer, but know it's something you had to work to learn to ask it. So either A, because folks don't always know what they don't know, and also B, because folks, you know, anxiety, blah blah blah. People think we know what the hell we're talking about when we talk about math, and we have to quickly dispel that. We're all fools here, but we have to get to that hump with folks.
Yeah, I think this is central. I mean, the last week we had this, like, we're having weekly meetings on the common space, the common organizational or whatever it's called. And we've had like this huge whiteboard, and then we drew the social mediations diagram. And then we were discussing, and then there were like people who are not STPers, but you know, who have been coming in and who have been participating. And then there was this point where we were like, okay, but what the hell is a political ecology? Is it like, you know, what is the relation? And you know, there are lots of stuff that only appears when we try and ask or explain. And so I think it really helps dispel this illusion of knowledge.
Yeah, I also think one of the things our theory can do that's really cool is I think it's almost kind of following similar stuff as like Boal and Freire, in the sense of like I feel it's like almost theory of the oppressed, where it's a lot easier to kind of interface people's experiences and without having to learn like a technical language. I think sometimes the diagrams really help to kind of cut across a lot of jargon. And what that's one of the things, you know, kind of again when it comes to like taking things into movements. You know, honestly, like there's not a movement I can think of that, I mean, there's always like the diplomacy and like tact of any given interaction. I'm not trying to say we just come in waving our like STP flag, like prepare to learn plebs, like obviously, but like as far as like the basic, like, do we have something to offer, even if we're not indigenous or black or part of a particular labor? Yeah, no, I think the social media mediation diagrams, I think our theory of social, I think we have things to offer, political ecologies and stuff right off the bat. How we do so is important, but I think it's also, it's actually, now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm just kind of coming to this, but it's similar, like how internally we don't really divide learning and contributing. It's similar, like, and I think I can't remember if it was Raphael or Dennis already kind of said this, but it's like our listening is a lot like psychoanalysis. We have to keep kind of presenting enough of a theory for people to respond with, for us to be able to listen in a certain kind of way. But that doesn't mean, but the theory itself, or the diagrams, are so formal and have a certain kind of openness that it's I mean, again, we can, the way we go about it can be terrible, but there's almost something kind of like low cost about our diagrams that I think allow people to pick them up quickly to this, and you know, in the sense of like unintended consequences. I think a lot of our diagrams could, quote, go viral well beyond us and be useful to people we don't even know, just because they are so compact and generic and lacking in any kind of like, once you get the three corners of the social mediation diagram, you don't really need any of the jargon. You just kind of need that idea of, okay, well, is something being added or not? What that is, how that is, you don't know, but is the world getting bigger or is it getting smaller? Like these are, you can fill in so much of the particulars, but I think there's something profoundly universal there that we're going to keep teasing out, but I wouldn't be overly humble, I guess, or modest with what we have to say. I don't think that serves as much as being aware that as individuals or as a group, how we go about conducting ourselves will always be something to examine. But yeah, I think we've done some work and we have some things to say.
Yeah, I like this perspective. It's like we're kind of like just political meme makers, basically. Like we these diagrams and just, I mean, it's not like a Twitter meme, but it's a, like when you said it could go viral, yeah, I could see that happening. It's like not, because it is compact and it's not, it doesn't require a lot of, like it's hard to do it wrong, I guess, right? It's not as, you can't go wrong if you just draw some things out and start moving things around. Like that's and I like that. I like that aspect of our theory. That's something that you can do something with, right? It's not like you need to sit there and listen, although that's sometimes how we maybe when we have these 3 hour meetings, the perception is that, oh, you have to like listen and learn all this stuff before you can ever use it. But I think maybe that's something we can calibrate going forward, is making sure everyone here is empowered enough to like take any diagram or any theory and just like do something with it. Because then if you do something with it, you already know it, right? And I think that's also a principle in psychoanalysis, right? If you do something with your analysis, you pretty much are, it doesn't matter if you understand Freud or Lacan or whatever, you already got the point.
You know, folks, I think this was a very, I think this is a very good meeting. I don't know, do we have anything like left to talk? Does anyone want to bring something up? Because I don't think we had like a fix, this was more like an open-ended meeting, right?
I don't think we should talk about it now, but I guess we do just kind of have in the air what exactly it is we're gonna put out publicly. And that does seem like the next step. Fatima raised the question of whether or not we shouldn't be putting out I think a more general, I'm not quite sure, but something else instead of, if you want to, but are we putting out a public statement? Are we not? What? Yeah, I just kind of would like to know where we're.
Just
Uh,
before we go on this, is this like is this something that I should like, is the meeting for the group? Do we stop recording?
Oh no, I mean I don't want to necessarily get into details per se. I mean more just like what's the next step logistically. But I mean if we feel comfortable or more comfortable not recording, I don't think we need to either. So
Yeah,
but
I
yeah, I
know,
didn't
just
really,
asking.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
because we could just like also make it closed video, so there's no problem also.
okay. But yeah, I'm just wondering where people think how people feel about where we're at on that process. I have actually no particular feelings myself. I don't even know when or how things like this would get published.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe we're we're basically done for today. Maybe we can like we'll do the start working, seeing where this project is going. It seems exciting. And we can add resources and stuff to the channel on Palestine. And what else? I wanted to suggest maybe, I don't know, I wrote this in my statement. If you'd like to have like more organizational meetings, it can be during the Monday or other days, just so we like I don't know, organize internally. Like Dennis said, the close, the open doors. There's something that needs to be cleared out and so on. So yeah, it can be part of also the discussions that and that's suggested on building our mechanisms and so on. So it can be a space for like internal reflection. Yeah.
Agree. Yes, to org meetings. Yeah. So I guess like just to I don't know if there's anything left, but I think like I'd just like to call everyone's attention to the book project channel on Discord. I think this is very important for us to think about collectively. And also I think the next steps on our organizing, I think this is also something that we have to get a grip in a sense. Anyone else? Okay, everyone. So I guess this is it for tonight. After a long meeting last week, we finished a bit earlier today. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening. See you all next
You
time.
all take care.
Take care.
Bye.